Hello, Mets fans, and welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast. My name is Andrew Claudio. That is Rich MacLeod. Welcome to 2026. The Mets have not lost this year. They haven't traded anybody that you care about. They haven't let a person that you grew affection for walk because David Stern said so yet this year. They haven't done anything else either, which I guess we'll talk about at the top of the show. We're also going to go through some premonitions. It started off as a superlatives episode, but then superlatives is actually rewarding for what was, and we're predicting what will be. So we're going to do the 2026 Mets premonitions after we talk about some news. Rich MacLeod, hello, sir. How are you, buddy? What is new in your life?
I'm good, Andrew. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. Getting over a cold, but like happy to be on the other side of the holidays. I love, like, my favorite time of year is that mid-September through New Year's. While I'm mourning that, I'm also always so exhausted by the end of the holiday season just because of all the traveling and all the get-togethers and drinking and eating. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be a normal human being again and like go to work and be a little bit healthy and that sort of thing. So I'm doing good. I'm ready to get back to real life.
Man, do I feel you on the traveling. It's been a couple. So I run into the fun situation of my brother's birthday's in December, my mom's birthday's in December, Jesus's birthday's in December. Like, all of the things, people that matter the most in my parents and my family's life are all, I need to go get together with all of them. Then when you get married, you realize there's a whole other side of the family that you also have to go see as often as possible, which just makes for, like you said, some traveling. And in this content creator world, we don't get the holidays off. So I unfortunately also had my New Year's, man. Knicks play till 10:30, and then thankfully they lost, because I think the post game would have took me through midnight. They haven't won yet since that New Year's game, which is a whole different conversation for a different podcast. But I am very ready for 2026 and to turn the page. Unfortunately, before we can talk about what the Mets will be in 2026, we need to talk about two news items that I guess somewhat involve the Mets in the fact that they're baseball headlines that the Mets decided not to be a part of. We spent some time this offseason, Rich, talking about Tatsuya Imai and Kazuma Okamoto as options for the Mets, as replacements, as upgrades in the rotation, as potential Pete Alonso replacements if he were to find a different home. Both have found their new homes for 2026 in the majors, and it will not be the New York Mets. Tatsuya Imai ends up with the Astros, a 3-year, $63 million deal. There's escalators within the contract that get it to $63 million. The base of the contract is $18 million a year, with innings thresholds that, if he clears them, will get them up to around $21 million. Regardless, the fact that he ends up with the Astros with an opt-out after each of the first two seasons is fascinating. According to Mark Feinstein of MLB.com, the Mets weren't sold on Imai as an impact starter. More on that in a second. And then Kazuma Okamoto signed with the Blue Jays, a 4-year, $60 million deal. No opt-outs reported around this contract. Also, no mention of the Mets in any reports connected to Okamoto. I wonder what this means for Bo Bichette, but I will just start here, Rich MacLeod. Are you upset that Tatsuya Imai or Kazuma Okamoto did not end up with the New York Mets?
No, I don't think so. The one thing with Imai is looking at how the deal is structured. I'm like, that would have been interesting. That seems like it is in the wheelhouse of the front office. The quote from Feinstein saying that the Mets didn't view him as an impact starter, that actually weirdly makes me more hopeful. I think the initial gut reaction is like, well, you fucking thought Frankie Montas was last year. But I think they might just be evaluating the rotation differently. And if they're saying like Tatsuya Imai, we're not sure about being a frontline starter, it makes me think that they are shooting for higher, and we just haven't seen them pull the trigger quite yet because all those guys are still available other than Dylan Cease. So it's kind of my rational take there. Okamoto was never really heavily linked to the Mets. I'm actually shocked that of the three big Japanese guys, he got the most years He got double what Munetaka Murakami got, which no one ever would have thought that. So that was really surprising to me. I feel like the Blue Jays are probably still in on a Bichette or a Tucker. I don't think 4 years, $60 million is going to knock them out for that kind of thing. I think they have one of the best, one of the most rich ownerships in all of baseball right now. I think they're top 5. So I would expect them to still be big game hunting on one of those two players. But yeah, I'm not particularly upset about it. I didn't think either of these players were going to go to the teams that they wound up on. I thought that was interesting just from a baseball perspective.
The Okamoto contract, him ending up in Toronto while Bo Bichette just is kind of dangling out there. I wonder how much this takes them out of, like I said, his sweepstakes. Does that end that relationship? Seeing the reaction from Blue Jays fans that, like, in a vacuum, this is a good deal, but I wanted Bo.
Is he going to DH too? Like, you got Vlad.
They got Bo. Well, you talking about Bo, or are you talking about Okamoto? You got George Springer there. Also, they just signed Anthony Santander to 5 years a year ago. So is that just like a wash of a contract? So they have several DH options already in house, right?
Unless they think they can make Okamoto work at third base. Because otherwise, I mean, this is not the just Blue Jays, but it's just from a baseball perspective, it is like really interesting as a fit for me.
So Ernie Clement, postseason hero, is their second baseman right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then Andres Jimenez, former Met legend, is like maybe the best defensive shortstop in baseball, is their shortstop. Vlad at first. And so I assumed watching this happened that Okamoto was their third base option, because I thought if they're signing Bichette, Bichette's coming here to play third base or not play second is the point, or not shortstop is the point. I gotta be honest. I took this as we're moving on from blank, and their only hole I see in their everyday lineup is a potential Nathan Lucas option, and that's where the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes currently sit. That they're the favorite, and who knows where that sweepstakes eventually ends up. But I thought I received this news as they're out of the Bo Bichette running. Personally, I don't know what if another move, a corresponding move comes that opens up, like a Jimenez trade or an early Clement trade to open it up, maybe. But yeah, that's how I received it. Significantly more connected to the Mets is look, the Okamoto thing. I think the Mets not getting involved is just a strong endorsement of Brett Beatty as our third baseman. Anybody else than Pete Alonso at first base as their option, like, that'll come up later in the pod, but I don't think they looked at him as especially for 4 years, a necessary investment for first base. And then the Imai conversation. So it being the Astros, I think this takes them, I don't know if they ever were in the re-signed Valdez conversation, right? So now this really opens Valdez up to like going someplace else. I'm starting to wonder, in the same context that you said, are the Mets looking for him on a similar contract, but higher AAV, but there's opt-outs after 1 and 2 years. Like, here's a 3-year deal and opt out after 1. And we get to just kind of play it that way. Like, you get to revisit free agency when maybe the go the same route that a lot of your counterparts and colleagues have gone. So that's my hope, is that they're looking for something a little more proven, a little more major league ready than Imai. And yeah, I told you many times I was very fascinated by his major league prospects, especially at where he is as in his age, and what the YouTube compilations will show me. But I can't leave this and say the Mets missed out on something when there's just no evidence to say that he's going to translate to the majors as like it would with others, you know?
And if he does, he's going to be a free agent in 11 months.
Exactly.
And you get another shot at it. If he looks like Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which probably won't happen, but if it does, you can throw a bunch of money at him next December because he's going to opt out, of course.
Is Imai a Boris client?
Oh, boy, I don't think he is.
No, it was Suzuki that was a Boris client, right? I think
he's not a Boris client.
He's not a Boris client.
I'm not sure what his agency is, but when I did the free agency guide, I put a tag on Boris guys, and Imai was not one of those guys.
This now sets up for a vast free agent market for pitching, starting pitching next offseason, with Skubal hitting free agency and Imai potentially hitting free agency. If Valdez is a 1+1, him hitting free agency. I don't know what the lockout or potential work stoppage is going to mean for all of this. If all of these big market teams are going to be looking at different financial capabilities, but we'll see. We'll see.
The other thing before we move on,
please.
The Imai signing, which I think is a potentially interesting impact on the Mets, is there's been lots of rumors about the Astros needing to shed some salary. They just added a decent amount per season. I think you said the floor was $18 million a year, but it could go up with Imai. They probably won't re-sign Valdez now, so they save some money there. But it does make me like Brian Windhorst meme about Christian Walker. And he had a pretty bad first year with the Astros last year, but is a power hitting first baseman who plays really good defense. He's a right-handed hitter, and I think some people would potentially bet on him bouncing back. If they're looking to get out of the last 2 years and give or take $40 million of that deal, is that something the Mets would jump in on? Is that a potential solution for them at first base? There's another impact of the Imai signing there that I think could be very interesting for this team.
More on that potentially in a second as we move on into the meat of our episode today. So this was an idea we came up with as I think I threw out the idea. Tell me if I'm getting the order wrong. I threw out the idea of superlatives, and then we decided last week to more make it a mailbag, and then the week before we would count down the best moments, like to try and be positive because the vibes were not there. And then when we finally got to a list of superlatives, you came up with a great list of, I'm going to say like 11 of the 12 that we have. You came up with the list. And when I finally went to go do my research, I was like, these are premonitions. These are projections. Like, have you seen Final Destination? Either of the movies? Yes. Okay. So that's how I looked at this. We're all on the plane. We're seeing potentially the Mets crash. And then we're waking up and realizing it didn't happen. But now we get to project that the plane's going to crash. But these are premonitions for the 2026 Mets overall. Like, this is calendar year. So premonitions for the Mets for 2026. Rich, am I getting all of that right?
Final Metstination.
You're a writer, sir. That was well done. Final Metstination. If that was good for SEO, I'd make that the title. Maybe there's a way like it's Final Metstination. Premonitions for the 2026 Mets
or something. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But you have to put like scenes from Final Destination with Lindor and Soto coming out of a race car or behind a log truck or something.
I was going to say it's definitely like Sean Manaea driving behind a truck full of logs.
Yes, exactly. Or what's the fourth one? There's a race car one. There's a one at the
roller coaster.
The roller coaster one is insane. Yeah. The one that came out last year was really fun with the skyscraper.
I didn't see that one, but that's the needle, right? In Seattle?
Yes, it's so it's not Seattle, but it is a space needle in the middle of a suburb. Like, it's not in a city.
Okay.
It's just like early 60s when the Space Needle happens. It's the opening thing that leads to the premonition in the movie where the Space Needle had just opened. And again, it's not actually the Space Needle in Seattle or the one in the CN Tower in Toronto. But yeah, the thing collapses and hijinks ensue. Fun movie if you're into that type of stuff. It's a fun, like, turn your brain off the disaster movie. I like those movies. Okay. Rich, I think we should just get started with the first premonition category. Who is most likely to be the Mets MVP in 2026? You go first.
Okay. I think the obvious guy is the best guy on the team, but I'm actually not going to go there. And I'm going to say it's Francisco Lindor. I think.
Oh. I was like, wait, I thought you were going with Lindor. Okay. Now I see where you're going with this. Go ahead.
Soto is clearly like the best player on the Mets, but I'm kind of kicking it back to 2024 here. I have to think that the foot injury in early, what was that, June or late May of last year in LA had lingering effects, and Lindor had a somewhat down season for him offensively. Even so, we saw some defensive gaffes that were a little bit unlike him at times. Still had like a very high WAR season, was in the top 10 in the National League, but wasn't quite that guy that we saw really rally the team from the year before. I think you're going to have a new clubhouse with guys coming in, and they're going to look to Soto and Lindor, and they're not going to have these like preconceived notions or pre-existing relationships that maybe Lindor had with like a Jeff McNeil or some guys like that. I think that locker room reset is going to help that. And I also just think Lindor is going to be more used to, working with Soto every day now. I think they're going to have more of a just rapport with each other, even if they're not best friends. And I just think that he's going to have a bigger production kind of season. And I could see him being that kind of guy that's really rallying the team around him, like we saw a lot 2 years ago.
I've never seen a fascination to this extent over whether two players are like best friends in a locker room.
You know what it's like? It's
What?
It's Jeter, A-Rod, except I don't think these guys actually hate each other like Jeter and A-Rod did.
They played the same position, and there was legit distrust there. Like there's never been in my opinion, why don't these guys love each other, and why don't they have a roommates podcast like the Knicks? And I just people, they're at two completely different parts of their lives. You know what? Also, if they win this year, we're just never going to hear about the relationship of Lindor and Soto. I don't think this will be a story whatsoever. There is such a fascination with the Mets clubhouse last year. I don't know if you're the one that put it out there that nobody's asking them about what the clubhouse was like in April, May, and June when they had the best record in baseball. I did see the outstanding tweet you put out there that the Post has now gone to Mickey Callaway and Paul Blackburn as options for tell us about what went wrong in the Mets clubhouse. When does Tony Bernazard get the phone call? Genius line, by the way, Rich.
I mean, if we're asking a sex predator essentially about it, and the worst pitcher on the Yankees and the Mets from last year, like what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
New York Post. It seems like New York Post is a bit of a tabloid. Like I don't think that's like a controversial statement here. So I know what they're doing. It's just like, okay, like I don't want to hear, like, are we going to call Aaron Heilman next? Like, should we see what Jared Porter is up to if we want to get to guys who are being inappropriate with people? Like, Jesus Christ, let's move it along here and talk about 2026. I'm sick of talking about 2025.
Yeah. And again, if they finish 87 and 75 and are the third wild card or the first wild card, are we having any questions about the locker room? I get it. What JD Martinez and Jose Iglesias were to 2024 was exactly what they needed from a leadership standpoint. They also had great pitching, and Francisco Lindor played like an MVP for 5 months, and they won. And also, if they lose one more game in 2024, they miss the playoffs, and we're never talking about how great the Mets clubhouse was. Like, that's how the margin between the narrative is one game in both seasons. They're a playoff team if they win one more game last year. They're not a playoff team if they lose one more game the year before. So this notion, this narrative that it'll come up later, the smear campaign against Lindor continues to be obnoxious, which is why my answer to this question will be Juan Soto, just from a statistical standpoint.
Yeah.
So Juan Soto, I remember this day very vividly. There was some type of forecast in the weather for New York that like was going to prohibit the White Sox, who were here for a 3-game set, from getting out safely if they played a night game. So they moved the game to noon on a Wednesday. It was May 28th. I know this because the Knicks had just gone down 3-1 in the conference finals. I was extremely overworked, and the wonderful person that is my wife, Mrs. Claudio, told me, go to the Mets game. They play at noon today. Don't look at the Knicks. Don't look at anything going on at work. You need a break. Go watch the Mets. And tickets were so cheap, Rich. I sat 4 rows behind the dugout. I was able to get as best of seats as possible. The Mets ended up losing this game, and Juan Soto goes 0 for 5. His numbers at that time dropped to 224 average. It was 352 on base, which for him is bad. A 393 slugging, which again for him is very bad, and a 745 OPS. From that point on, he played 105 games over the rest of the remainder of that season. From that game on, he had a 285 average, a 418 on base, a 596 slugging, which translates to a 1.018 OPS, 35 homers and 80 RBIs, and 31 stolen bases, by the way, over the final 105 games, which averaged out over 162, is a 54 home run season with 123 RBIs and 48 stolen bases. I think we get more of that guy over 162 games. And that's the thing. We're talking about a guy that hit 42 home runs last year anyway. Or 43 home runs last year anyway. So I think he's going to challenge 50 home runs this season. The defense will be what it is, but over the course of 162 games, I think he will absolutely be the Mets MVP and will be the reason they're in a playoff race. Whether they make it or fall short will be a different conversation. But why he will be once again in MVP conversations, the guy that finished third in MVP last year.
It's funny because I think Juan Soto has the best odds to be the real MVP, which would be the first in Mets history, by the way. But I think like Lindor might be that kind of like intangible team MVP over the real MVP kind of thing. But like, I think these are the two clear answers here, and I don't think either is wrong.
Yeah. The next one I think is a fascinating one. Who will lead the Mets in innings pitched next season? Who will it be, Rich?
So I think people are gonna be surprised about my answer on this one because I'm going with Clay Holmes. And at first glance, I think you're like, there's no goddamn way that it's gonna be Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes was 3 innings shy of being the Mets innings leader last season.
Yep.
And that was in his first year transitioning from being a relief pitcher to a starter. I think this second year is going to be even better for Holmes because he's coming off of a season where he's gotten used to that larger workload. I think he's going to go deeper into games. He's going to have less restrictions. I think he's going to be more used to, all the ups and downs and all the different innings and things that you just come with being a starter that you're not used to as a relief pitcher. I think we saw with Seth Lugo when he went for the Padres to the Royals. I think he got even better his first year with the Royals, which is year 2 of him being a full-time starter. As long as he can stay healthy, I think that this is a good bet. And I also am the most confident in the current pitchers on the roster that he's still going to be here by the time opening day starts, where you could make an argument that like a Peterson, and I mean, nobody's picking Senga. Like I'm sure you're not going to pick him.
I'm not, no.
But both of those players have been, at least like mentioned lightly in potential trade talk. So I'm going to go with him, and I don't want to step on who you may potentially be picking, but I'll cut it off there.
Well, the Clay Holmes just missing last year, being the leader last year, also coincides with them turning him into an opener or a connector in the middle of September, So who knows how many other starts he could have made that he goes an extra inning here, an extra inning there. And he fell, like you said, 3 innings shy of David Peterson, who is my pick for 2026. Walk year David Peterson is my logic here. He already was the Mets leader in innings pitched last year. Guy made an all-star team. It hasn't really come out what potential injury there might have been for him, but I just do not think he was healthy. Whether he had an innings wall or not is also a conversation. You're talking about a guy that was their best starter for 4.5 months and then just fell off a cliff over the final 6 weeks of the season. put a little bit more together, you're talking about a lefty that's going to hit the market at 28, I believe is his age.
He's already 30.
Or 30. He'll hit the market at 30, 31. And we just mentioned how stacked the free agent market's going to be next offseason. Add a lefty like David Peterson coming off. He's been a recent All-Star. Will probably get some postseason. Well, already has postseason experience. And maybe if the Mets, achieve something this year, he'll get some postseason success and then some starts to prove himself there. It's a gamble on a guy going into his walk year is my conversation about David Peterson. So that's my case there. What do you think?
I think it's a good one as long as he's here. I mean, he was giving them the reason that Clay Holmes made up a lot of the difference was because the last 2 months, David Peterson was going like 2 to 3 innings in a lot of his starts and getting annihilated. I'm curious if he was injured. Like a lot of people speculate about the hip, but we have gotten absolutely no information that he's gotten any kind of like surgeries this offseason or anything. So like, it's also just possible he hit a wall because the year prior he had hit a career high in innings, and this year he sort of blew through that and he ran out of gas. I think it's a good answer. I was also tempted to take McLean. I just know that I think the rookie part of it he might be a little bit reined in because he also went way over his career high in innings last year between the minors and the majors. So I think there will be times where they are a little bit more conservative with him.
Yeah, that Atlanta start, the Cookie Carrasco game last year, right after Alonso set the record, where Peterson doesn't get out of the 4th inning and gives up 6 runs. That started a tailspin for him. Now, the next start after that in Washington, he went 8 innings, gave up 1 run, struck out 10. And then over the final 6 starts of the season, including an inning and a third against the Cubs, David Peterson averaged 4 innings a start and had a 10.36 ERA over the final 6 starts of the season. So I'm betting on those starts being... Oh, he didn't actually pitch against the Marlins. So that was the other thing. He didn't pitch the last game of the season. They chose not to go Peterson.
Not that series. The series where they lost 3 of 4 right after they swept the Phillies.
You're right.
Make it out of the 2nd inning.
He lost the
8 runs.
Yeah, gave up 8 runs in 2 innings. Is that the second game? That's the third game of that series because they scored 100 runs on that Friday night. Yeah.
That was the game where I think they almost came back, but they just kept giving up runs and the offense shut off the last 3 innings.
So Soto ties it with, he had 2 home runs this game. They tied it at 8 and then they lost 11-8 to your point. Yeah. So, hopefully he does better this year, that we get more productivity in the final 6 weeks of the season. The next premonition category, who will be most likely to be a breakout star? Oh no, never mind. I read the list wrong.
We changed the order.
So I'm just gonna, well, you know what? You'll get to see the behind the scenes, folks. I did not know we changed the order, but the order is who was most likely to be the primary first baseman in 2026. Curious where you go with this, Rich.
I actually think this is the hardest one in the entire list because, I mean, if you peeked at the notes, I pre-made selections for most of these. I left this one blank because I was like, maybe it'll come to me by the time we record. And here we are recording this, and I'm still not really sure. I have had an inkling lately that I actually think maybe they do wind up with Bellinger, but even then, I don't know that he's going to be their primary first baseman. In that case, I think he might be the outfielder. So even if they got Bellinger, I don't think he's the answer to this. I'm going to have to go, and I think I have to go with Polanco because he's on the team, and I cannot imagine a universe where they let Mark Vientos start at first base every day in an offseason where they have so preached run prevention, and he has such a little experience there, and maybe he would be competent, but I think they're looking for better than that, and there's no evidence to say that he would be. I'm gonna have to go Jorge Polanco. I wanted to maybe mention Christian Walker, maybe Bellinger, but I don't know. There's so many variables with this one. I do think it's the hardest one to answer.
I think you're right. This is the most difficult one to answer confidently. It's why my answer was rather easy, Rich. My answer to who will be the Mets' primary first baseman is who David Stearns decided will be the Mets' primary first baseman. It's not Pete Alonso. That's my answer. Not Pete Alonso. Literally anybody can play first base but Pete Alonso, and David Stearns will be comfortable. It will be Mark Vientos. He's more comfortable. Jorge Polanco. He'd be okay with that. Sign Paul Goldschmidt. The rumor, or I guess the report out there from our buddy Healy about Jeff McNeil. Again, both of those guys, not Pete Alonso. It could be a Christian Walker. It could be a Ryan Clifford. I was staring at Eugenio Suarez as a potential option in free agency, as like you get a big home run bat in here to play first base and can play third against righties if Beatty is against lefties. Excuse me, if Beatty's struggling against lefties. All of these players that we just mentioned fall into the category of not Pete Alonso. That's who will be the Mets' primary first baseman. And I think it goes to, I rewatched Moneyball over this little 2-week break that we had, man. And it's just the philosophy is like, just go give Chris Pratt a first base glove. And that's how the community considers the difficulty of getting someone that's never played first base to play first base. So that's who I think will be the primary first baseman, not Pete Alonso.
Maybe Chris Pratt is available.
You know what? He's not Pete Alonso. They might go that direction. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know if he's in Doomsday, do we? Maybe he has time.
I actually don't think the trailer's dropped for that yet, so maybe. Who knows? I know he's supposed to return, but they never say if he's going to be in the movie or not.
Yeah, so we'll see.
So the next premonition, most likely to be dealt in a major trade. I have an interesting answer for this. Actually, it's not as interesting. But who's your pick?
I'm going to go with Jonah Tong here. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think he's been mentioned so much in these bigger potential trades. As long as one of these guys is actually available, that makes it worth moving Tong. I think it would be him. And we purposely wrote this as major trade. So this is like going after a Scooble or a Mason Miller or a Joe Ryan or somebody of that ilk. I don't know if you would consider Edward Cabrera major.
I would not.
I don't know that they would do that, but yeah, I got to go with Tong here. I think he's the most sought after player in the Mets system right now. He is, I'll call him MLB adjacent at this point, where maybe he's not quite 100% ready, but he's gotten some experience there. And I think that if he's not making a team on opening day, I think he'd be in the majors by the summertime again. So I think it's going to be him if a major trade happens. And I still kind of think that one will.
It's the obvious answer. If you're looking at the Scooble route or really just any major trade that they might make. My answer is Mark Vientos. I think he will be the centerpiece of whatever trade for the next major leaguer that they make. That the next trade for, whether it's Luis Robert, training myself to say it correctly, whether it's a Scooble, whether it's a San Diego trade of sorts, although I guess they're looking for pitching, so maybe that won't be a Vientos trade. Point is, outside of him regaining whatever August was or whatever 2024 was as a bat, I think, and look, these projection sites, Zips and Steamer and Fangraphs, they keep having him as like a 35 home run hitter. I hope you're all right. That's not like me asking if you're okay. No, I hope you're all correct about Mark Vientos. I think this is just a player with a lot of holes in his swing and his approach that will lead to the Mets eventually pivoting and calling up Ryan Clifford or finding somebody more consistent. So Mark Vientos is my option.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, Vientos was a guy I've been saying for about a year that I thought they'd trade, and it's almost gone on so long. I'm like, maybe they won't. Maybe he'll somehow be the one that lasts out of all the guys who have departed or been shipped away this winter. But yeah, I think the concerns remain with his game. And if you're looking at the full sample with him, I don't know that you can point to those 3.5 to 4 months in 2024 and 1 good month in 2025, and say like, this is a guy we're going to rely on for a team that kind of sort of needs to win and have a bounce back season. So I could see it's interesting that the projections have him going up in home runs after a bad year, because they actually had him going down in home runs after 2024, which they were correct about. So, I mean, I don't know how they put this stuff together, much smarter people than me, but it's interesting.
I think it's much to do about the fact that Alonso's gone. Like, they're going to just give him at bats to work it. It's a volume thing. Like Josh Hart and all the counting stats he accrued a year ago with the Knicks, playing 50 minutes a game. That's how you get a bunch of triple doubles. I think that's the path for Vientos. And look, maybe I'm wrong and he has a great year. Guy still has years of control, has 3 minor league options left. I still think you're looking at a player that has a lot of holes in his swing. And that's just not someone I think the Mets will, from a run prevention standpoint, be able to even run creation, as far as that's concerned. I think that's not someone you could build around. So he'll be the guy that they eventually send out. I think the next one is actually where what I meant by that. I have a fascinating answer for this one. So where do you go for this?
So this is most likely to become a Met this year.
Never said the full category. Sorry. Most likely to become a Met in 2026. So this is
audio listeners.
This is at any point in 2026, they will become a Met this year.
I'm going with I was very tempted to go bold here and be like, it's Tarek Skubal. It's this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with Luis Robert Jr. because there's just been such a long-standing connection here, and they still have a hole at the position of center field. And I just have a feeling like you can go get him and not give up a ton. It probably is gonna be him. And whereas the other guys, I'm more concerned that they're just not actually available to go get. Like a Skubal or a Ryan or any of these starting pitchers on the trade market, where at least like in terms of trades, Robert, I do think is a guy that is going to be moved. And yeah, there's just been like so many reports connecting them since last June, July, that I feel like eventually it's probably just going to happen.
So I think you're right that he'll get moved. And I think the Mets are a likely candidate to put him in center field, put him in the outfield. I agree with that. I think both Tucker and Bellinger will have to go elsewhere before they go that way. By the way, I am going to go bold and say Tarek Skubal, because this is for the calendar year, which means it includes next offseason. So I don't see another team. I think him being a Boris Climate will make this a bidding war. And every bidding war Steve Cohen has entered, he's largely won. That I think it's been a bidding war, because I don't think Yamamoto, as much as he wanted the most money, he eventually took the highest offer that the Mets gave him and took it to the Dodgers to match, and then never went back to the Mets. When it became the Max Scherzer sweepstakes, the Mets won. When it became obviously the Juan Soto sweepstakes, the Mets won. I think we're headed for a year where it's going to be very obvious the Mets are missing an ace, amongst other things that they might be missing because of a disciplined approach in the offseason. And at the end of the year, even if they're like an 85-win team and they sneak in as a wild card or they just miss it, there's going to be a glaring need at the top of the rotation. And you're going to see Steve Cohen say, all right, let me take this one. Just this one. You go fill out the rest of the roster. You build it with depth, David. We were better than I think a lot of people thought we would be. We need to go big game hunting, and the best pitcher on the market. This is trending toward like Scherzer, who was 30 when he signed that contract with the Nationals. If Skubal wins a third straight Cy Young, we're talking about the biggest contract for a pitcher in the sports history. And I think that person to give out that contract will be Steve Cohen. So I'm going to trust that this whole narrative around the casino is not going to happen. And with the technical version of this question being become a Met this year, before 27 starts, Tarek Skubal will be a New York Met.
You really went with a loophole on this one.
I did. Yeah.
So full clarification, they are not trading for him. They're getting him after the 2026 season, but before 2027 calendar year starts.
I think he's a Tiger all season is my answer.
Okay.
I think the Tigers will be good this year. They have so much good infrastructure that, like, is it crazy to say they barely missed winning the division at the end of the season? It took a monumental collapse for Cleveland to win it. I don't see anybody else in that division that's other than those two teams. And then they, because of Scooble, were able to beat Cleveland in the wild card round. So I think the Tigers are still going to win that division, will be contenders to potentially win the league and go far. And then Scooble, like Garrett Cole, will enter free agency as a 30-year-old pitcher coming off of like a lot of success. And the Mets will be primed and ready to give another Boris client one of the biggest versions of the contracts possible.
Yeah, this next one will be a funny inverse of this.
Okay. Most likely to not be a Met by 2027.
Yeah. So again, calendar year. So this is not, I mean, this could be by the end of the 2026 season or just the start of next year. Mine's not like super controversial. I don't think it's going to be David Peterson. I think the more interesting thing about Peterson is just the when. Is he going to get traded in the next month, or will he finish out his last season under contract with the Mets and just leave in free agency? We talked about him a little bit before. He's 30. He will be 31 before the 2027 season starts. Even if he has like a really nice bounce back season, is David Stearns going to give a 4 to 5 year contract to a 31-year-old pitcher that is now the longest tenured Met after he got rid of the first 4 longest tenured Mets? I don't think so. So I think this will be Peterson's last hurrah with the Mets if he's not dealt before the season even starts.
This is where I asked you beforehand, are we allowed to have the same answer? And this is a very obvious David Peterson. And you actually hit on why I thought, outside of it being a walk year and him being a pitcher and like hitting his 30s, and you're talking about a guy that might get a 4-year deal. David Peterson, if he has another good season, is a prime candidate for someone to give him 4 years or a 3 with a high AAV with an opt out in the 3rd year. So just a contract that David Stearns has not shown willingness to give to a starting pitcher. He's also the longest tenured Met. And if there's one thing we know that David Stearns hates, it's long tenured Mets. So yeah, very, very easy answer for me. The other, I was going to be funny with this as a backup option and say Clay Holmes because it's a 2-year deal. And so obviously he's not going to be on the Mets in 2027, but that's a boring answer. So yeah, David Peterson, I think, is the easy answer for both of us to give here. The next one.
I wonder if that'll be the only time we align on one, but we'll see.
Well, so this next one, I wonder where you go with this. Most likely to be a biggest fan target. Now, to clarify, you're saying like target of animosity, of complaint. Yeah, like this is all our angst goes to this person.
This is the guy all the tweets are about. This is who everybody who calls in WFAN complains about this year. It's the lightning rod of the Mets team. Mm-hmm. I'm going with, and I'm going to take a page out of your book on this one, whoever replaces Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
I do think there are 2 interesting backup candidates, but again, I'm not going to step on yours. I can bring those up afterwards. But yeah, I just think like there's going to be so much pressure to whoever that is. If Jorge Polanco is playing first base all the time, it's going to be him. If they bring in Christian Walker, if they call up Clifford, if they bring in somebody else, whoever that primary first baseman's going to be, that's going to be the guy that's like, when Pete Alonso has 15 home runs in the middle of May, you're going to have everybody being like, we got rid of fucking Pete Alonso for this jabroni. Like,
yes,
that's my answer.
That was Rich in Washington Heights with the call. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you for that. That was amazing. I now need someone to call into WFAN, and specifically to Carton, who like doesn't care about sports, and just to actually call in and be like, we got rid of Pete Alonso for this jabroni. Like, I please tell them that Just Mets sent you. So my answer is David Stearns. That everything that goes wrong this season is going to be directed at him because it's his team now. Like, it is going to be made in his image. Devin Williams blows the save. All right, David Stearns, this is the closer that you wanted. Luke Weaver blows a lead. All right, David Stearns, this is the former Yankee. This is where you like to go shopping is like the Yankees, you know? Any first baseman that you're talking about, to what you said, it's like, well, Peaches had a 2-homer game in Baltimore, you know? Well, that's nice. Mark Semien is honestly the guy considered being my answer. And if he's got a 650 OPS in June and Nimmo like is on pace for 100 RBIs, there will be a narrative that's like, hey, you wanted to prevent all these runs, but you're not creating anything with a aging 35-year-old second baseman who just like might be doing fine from a defensive standpoint. But it's why I've always made the comp about what Jose Iglesias was as a 35-year-old second base, middle infield option. He was great for run prevention. He also hit 330 that season. Like you got him to create runs too. If he's just there to be a defensive replacement, we have Luis Angel Acuna. I think anything that goes wrong this season will be directed at David Stearns because of, and maybe Cohen's an extension of this too. So the front office, the management, the infrastructure will all be directed, but I think Stearns will be the poster child for it. So David Stearns will be my biggest fan target for 2026.
He's definitely public enemy number one right now.
Within the fan base, yeah.
100%. Semien was one of my backups that I was talking about. I think that's an easy one because you could just see if he has a season like he does last year, it's going to be an easy one for people to point to and be like, we got rid of Nimmo for this piece of shit.
For this jabroni. Goodness. Yeah, that's my new favorite word.
For this jabroni.
Yeah.
The other one, and this is not the large part of the fan base, but just the loud part, is with all the articles that have come out and all of the jettisons that have happened, if Francisco Lindor gets off to his typical slow start, it's going to be so loud. And I will say unfairly, I don't agree with it. But you look at the New York fan base and media market, they often target their own best players. I won't make it a racial thing, but that happens sometimes too. Look at what happened with Beltran a lot of the time. People really didn't like him and made a lot of comments about him, even though he was putting up numbers pretty much every single season he was every year. The New York fan base and big cities in general, like Philly does this too, Boston does, like they'll go after their top players if the team is not performing. And with all the noise that we've gotten about the clubhouse in recent months, like we don't fall for that, but a lot of people do. And I could see people getting upset if Lindor has like a 650 OPS at 2 weeks into the year and the Mets are under 500.
This is the fan base that you're talking about. The exact same argument I'm going to make for a future category. So we'll get to that later. Yeah. Next one, most likely to lead the Mets in saves. Yeah, we have the same answer for this.
Okay. This is, though, I put this in because it is essentially a do you trust Devin Williams question. And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that he's going to bounce back, that David Stearns is going to be not right to have let Diaz walk, because, again, that wasn't part of the plan. That was a mistake. But cooked with this thinking that he could be back to the old Devin Williams that we saw, I think that we're going to see some version of that. He might not be the top version of Williams that we saw in those Milwaukee years, but I think he will be a above average to better closer for the Mets this year. I think the only other option would be like Luke Weaver if you think that Williams is going to fail.
So I'm less like David Stearns cooked on this as my reason for picking Devin Williams. I'm more, if he isn't the saves leader, this is going to be a very bad baseball team, because the ninth inning being a question, just is something I didn't really have to worry about. Like, even when Diaz was bad, I still didn't really have a question. Outside of the first year that Diaz was here, I had a dependable ninth inning option. If Devin Williams isn't the saves leader in 2026, we're very in deep doo-doo, Rich. The funny answer I was going to put, as just to be different was Clay Holmes. Like maybe the Mets have so much starting pitching depth that they finally pull the plug and move him back to the bullpen because Devin Williams is so bad. But I also agree. I think Devin Williams is going to be better in 2026. So I think that's one thing I'm hoping that we're right about, and that David Stearns was right about, is that he has like a 35 save season with an all-star appearance, so we'll see what happens.
Would be nice.
Yes, would be. Most likely to be better than everyone expects. Where'd you go for this?
That's an interesting one, and you'll see we're trying to balance out like the negative with the positives in these. I'm going with Sean Manaea because I feel like nobody's really talking about him at all. He was really awesome for the Mets in 2024 after he adjusted his arm angle. I don't think that was a fake thing. We saw it in a lot of spurts last year. Like most of his starts until the last few, he got off to really good starts. And then my perception was ran out of gas because of all the injury issues and would get blown up. There were a few times late in the year where he got blown up right from the get-go, and then he fell out of favor with the team because they were in a pennant race. But I just have to think a year after he had his spring training cut short and he missed the first 3+ months because of an oblique issue, and those are a real pain in the ass to get over. That's other than like a season-ending injury, that's one of the worst injuries you can get in baseball because like everything in your side and the only thing you can do is wait, and if you retweak it, you start completely from zero. So the fact that he had to deal with that, and then he also had the loose bodies in his elbow pretty much the second he came back, he was never fully healthy or built up the way a pitcher normally is going into a season. And I think that we're going to see a version of him that much more resembles what we saw in the late summer of 2024. Maybe not quite that level, but I think he's going to return to form this year as long as he stays healthy, which has, look, to be fair, that has been a question mark for him a lot in his career. But if he is healthy, I think he's going to be a lot better than people think.
It's one of the two answers I wrote down. The other one being Kodai Senga. It seems very clear to me at this point, unless the Mets make an aggressive move for a pitcher, that Senga is going to be part of this rotation. Talk about injury concerns and whether you can trust him over the course of a full season. I have no idea how many starts you can be comfortable predicting Kodai Senga to make. You could tell me he makes 30. You could tell me he makes 20. You could tell me he makes 10. There's also an effectiveness conversation with how bad he was when he came back from injury after the All-Star break. This is still a guy that through his first 13 starts last season had a 1.47 ERA, was in the Cy Young conversation. His FIP was good. All of his process numbers were good. With a little BABIP luck is also maybe this is where the run prevention will help. Guys like Senga, guys like Manaea that just have better defense around him as they're putting the ball in play. My first choice would have been Manaea, but just by default, I'll go Senga. Is able to perform better because he doesn't have Pete Alonso throwing balls to him when he's trying to cover first base, and the Mets' plan of not Pete Alonso covering first base, playing first base, will most benefit a Kodai Senga.
And if Senga winds up on the Padres and has a really good year, you could still technically be correct on this one.
Exactly. This doesn't isn't determined what team they're playing for this year.
That is one thing too. I'd love to do is to look back on these when the season is over or the year is over for some of these and see how we did. I think that would be an interesting exercise.
I love it. Already planning for next year, Rich. That's what's up.
Thinking ahead. We might have a lot of evergreen time with a lockout, so we might need to have some ideas.
Get creative. Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we've got most likely to lose their job. I had one candidate for this, so I'm curious where you go here.
Yeah, I mean, I was tempted to say no one because...
Oh, if that's an option, then I'll choose that one.
It can be if you want. I'm not going to go there, but I'm just saying I was tempted to go there, but I'm going to... I'm going to answer this in the spirit of the question of just likely. It's not David Stern. He's not getting fired. Like they could win 65 games. I don't think he's getting fired. The only guy is Carlos Mendoza. And whether he deserves it or not, different question. But they are not getting rid of the president of baseball operations in year 3. That is a long-term type of hire. It takes years and years to put it together. Even if I think he should be fired, he won't be. I'm very confident in that. They just fired basically the entire coaching staff. There's one person left, and it's the manager. And fair or not, if they have a really bad season and they need to sacrificial lamb, it's going to be Carlos Mendoza, or it's going to be nobody, and they'll just run it back in 2027. That's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, if this comes to be, he's the only guy.
There's two different conversations here. There's who's most likely to lose their job and who will or could get fired. And Stearns, I'll tell you right now, Rich, they lose 97 games. Stearns absolutely has a case for getting fired at the end of the season. Like that. You want to talk about outcry and smear campaigns. When the ballpark is empty and you're paying luxury tax bills out the wazoo, and largely the roster that was assembled by David Stearns is the one that led to a 97 loss season. That might be cause for a conversation with your team president. Most likely to is the guy who has the least job security on the team, and that's Carlos Mendoza. This also could be like a mid-season firing. In the same way Willie Randolph, after a season where the team collapsed, the year after making to the NLCS, was fired in 2008 mid-season. If the team's hovering around 500, you fire the manager and see if the next one can light a spark within the team. It's just like a tale as old as time. A lot of teams have done this. The current Phillies manager was a candidate that did that. Thompson came in and replaced Joe Girardi, and then they went to the World Series later that year. So yeah, Carlos Mendoza is the easy answer here.
I always think about the Rockies with that too, when Clint Hurdle.
Yeah. The Jack McKeon with the Marlins is the best example. It took over, and then they won the World Series as a result,
Yeah. They have Kai Correa, who is young, and some people like him as the bench coach. Like, yeah, they'd have to be really bad to do a mid-season firing. I really hope we're not talking about that. I'm so sick of coaches getting fired between like the Knicks. At least they're like highly successful, even though I'm quite nervous about where they are right now. But again, different podcast for that.
They're at their first real point of adversity. I will say that. Yes.
And the Jets and the Giants who are just like firing coaches every other year, like hotcakes. I would love to not be talking about a team that's so bad that a mid-season firing is justified.
Yeah.
But if they did it, I would assume they would be doing that with the hopes of giving Kai Correa like 2-3 months to essentially interview on the job and see what they need to do going into 2027. But I don't think anybody's going to get fired this year. I don't think they're going to be that bad.
I think
famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words. Again, if they're that bad that they're trending toward, like you said, the 97 loss version of the team, I think you're looking at, again, the Willie Randolph example is the one I keep going back to. They were one game under 500 when they fired Willie Randolph, so we'll see. Next up, we've got most likely to be a breakout star for the New York Mets in 2026. Who you got, Rich?
I'm going to go with Carson Bench on this one. I almost feel like Nolan McLean could raise his Q status even higher this year, but I feel like he kind of already started to having his breakout in 2025. So trying to be true to the question, I'm going to go with Benj. I also think it's the kind of thing Mets fans probably really need this year is a homegrown position player to break out, to help soften the blow of losing Nimmo and Pete and even McNeil for some people. I think those homegrown guys blossoming energize fan bases in major ways, even in years where the team isn't particularly great. And Benj just seems like the guy that all the prospect people love him. Like it's a national thing. It's not just within the Mets system. He's like pretty high up in the top 100 boards, pretty much anywhere you look. And I think he's going to get playing time. If he doesn't make the team, I think he'll be on the team eventually. So I'm going to go with Benj.
I hope you're right. I have started my deep dive into Carson Benj and like what are his MLB projections. I saw one out there that has Michael Harris as a good projection for him. And if he's that defensively, let alone at times offensively, what Michael Harris became, especially post All-Star break Michael Harris last year. That'll play. That'll be a top of the order New York Met for a long time if Carson Benj is it. And you said this during the mailbag episode, the best way to replace homegrown Mets that you love is to replace them with new homegrown Mets that you can fall in love with. So
the new batch.
Yeah. I'm also picking a homegrown Met, and consider this an olive branch, Rich. I'm going Brett Baty. So Brett Baty over the final, I want to make this clear, did not have a great entire 2025. He finished with really fine splits, a 750 OPS, a 111 OPS plus, really good defense, established himself as an everyday third baseman. For context, got sent down after hitting a home run off of Zach Wheeler. And then at a certain point in the season, his average was down to 208 on June 21st with a 658 OPS. For those keeping track at home, that's not good. So we were through 57 games last year, 57 Brett Baty games last year, and he was bad. We can admit that. I'm clearly referencing a person that doesn't like to look at full season sample sizes. But I will then now talk about the other 74 games that Brett Baty played. And over those final 74 games, had a 289 average, a 352 on base, a 462 slugging, which translates to an 814 OPS. You combine that over a full season with the defense that he played last year, that's around a 5-WAR player. And if the Mets can add a 5-WAR player to their everyday lineup, everyday defense. And that's one of the things I'm actually hoping the Mets commit to. You want to tell me you're all about run prevention, then Brett Baty needs to play third base for 90% of the innings that he's available next season. I think this is the year that Brett Baty established himself as like a 5-hitter for the Mets. There will be borderline all-star conversations for Brett Baty. And with the baseline of defense, along with that version of his bat that we saw from about mid-June on, that'll play Brett Baty. Like I said about Carson Benj, like if you could do that, that'll play. If you guys could be that, then those are two homegrown Mets who bat left-handed that I could start to really appreciate and look forward to as cornerstones for this franchise. So Brett Baty will be my answer.
It was a very nice olive branch.
Yes. Yes. Had to.
Yeah. Brett Baty did last year to Mark Vientos what Mark Vientos did to Brett Baty the year before. And there's a bit of, I've probably made this comparison a few months ago on the pod. There's a bit of like a Ike Davis, Lucas Duda thing going on here of just like which one of them's going to win out, if any. And the Mets picked Lucas Duda back in the day, and they did make the right choice despite what happened in the 2015 World Series that I don't want to talk about ever again. But Lucas Duda was a really good player. Extremely, like one of the most underrated Mets of all time, if we're really going there. And Ike Davis wound up being like very washed up very quickly. I'm curious, like, will Brett Baty take the reins here and move forward with that? Is there going to be more back and forth? I think my biggest criticism of Brett Baty last year was just like he was so streaky. It was every time he had a good stretch, he would answer it with a really bad one, but he did have a much better second half than first half. So I would love to see this and have third base no longer be a question mark for this team, which it has largely been for many years at this
about a
point.
decade. Yeah. I think again, the baseline level of defense that he could provide. And look, the only difference now between the the Beatty Vientos to do to Ike Davis. If the DH exists in 2012, Ike Davis is first base and Lucas Duda is your DH. Like you would have been able to make both of them work if you had today's current format.
That is true.
Mark Vientos, if he is a full-time DH this year, I will feel so much better about his prospects long-term. The games where he plays third base this year will be incorrect decisions. That is how strongly I feel about the Mets' current roster and their current emphasis on what they want to do this year.
Shy of injuries, I actually think, hot take maybe, Mark Vientos plays 0 games at third base this year.
I hope you're right. He should have played 0 for most of last year too, but I kept seeing him in important playoff race games down the stretch. That entire Philly series where I had to watch him play third base because the unhittable pitchers, the unhittable lefties like Jesus Luzardo, Brett Beatty can't play against them, right? We need to make our defense so much worse because our 220 hitter needs to play every night. So yeah, I'm done relitigating how bad those decisions were. 2 more, I believe, most likely to have the most smear campaign articles written about them. You already answered mine. I'll just go first and say it'll be Francisco Lindor, and it'll be by a certain publication that masquerades as a tabloid. You just want to look up where those headquarters are for said New York Post and what other media mogul and entity also exists in the Avenue of the Americas building. You'll understand why said tabloid has said emphasis, and will target someone whose wife is in the Mamdani administration as a consultant. So yeah, it'll be Francisco Lindor, and I will get annoyed and most likely dismiss every single smear campaign about him. Yeah,
I think similar to one of the other categories we had, I think there's only 2 answers to this one, so I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to pick Juan Soto because unlike Lindor, Soto has to deal with the Yankee side of things still, even though, again, he's already been a Met longer than he was ever a Yankee. Soto's played on 4 teams, and the Yankees the least amount of playing time. He's more of a Padre than he was a Yankee, and yet he can't escape that, at least right now. And I just think anytime Soto farts, like there's a Yankee fan or a John Boy account that has to say something about it. And I think that's going to continue. Again, God forbid he has a bad week, especially if it's to start the season. You get it everywhere. And that's going to come in the form of tweets and poll videos from WFAN. And then, of course, you're going to have your articles. What's wrong with Soto? Is he not having fun? Does he hate Lindor? And I think it's going to be one of those 2 guys. Again, it's also the like star player gets the most heat kind of thing in New York. And I'm going with Soto there just because there's the Yankee side of it on top of the Mets stuff.
It's the 2 obvious player options. The idea of smear campaigns is why I didn't say Steve Cohen. I think there will get to be a point if the Mets are underachieving or just playing or not performing. And we're getting from the Steve Cohen side of things is like updates on the demolition and the construction of said casino and soccer stadium. He'll have stuff written about him for sure. I still think this idea of smear campaigns is an implicit understanding of unfairness. And these are the 2 obvious candidates for sure. Last but not least, who will sign a long-term extension most likely to sign a long-term extension with the New York Mets? Where did you go with this, Rich?
Yeah, I think it's going to be McLean on this one. He is 24 years old, which is crazy. He is under team control for still 6 full years. So the Mets could do a thing where you buy out some of those late ARB years. And this is like you have him under team control for like 10 years, but you're really only adding a few to the end. And you're just giving him more money than he's making as a young player right now. I think it would make all the sense in the world. I think he is the most likely young player to earn that just based on what he did in a brief stint in 2025. And we don't see the Mets do this very often. with their young players. This one would make a lot of sense to me. And while David Stearns did not draft him, I will credit David Stearns in this front office a lot in developing him over these last 2 seasons. You've just seen the way he shot up the prospect boards these last 2 years since Stearns and his infrastructure have come in. I would argue that other than the like die hard prospect guys, most people didn't know who Nolan McLean was when Billy Epler was here. And I think he would make the most sense. So I'm going with him.
It's the choice that makes the most sense. It's one that if he is as good as he was last season in the sample size that we saw, I would agree with that. To be different, I'm going to pick another 24-year-old that had in his final 41 games last year, had a 921 OPS. And as of it's either this offseason or next offseason, is entering his first year of arbitration eligibility, and that's Francisco Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
If you can lock up a catcher for whatever, 5 years, you buy out the final 3 years of arbitration on a team-friendly deal, a guy that has just had so many freak injuries and hasn't been able to stay on the field. If you say to him, we'll give you some long-term stability, when you're on the field, it seems like you're healthy, When you're on the field, it seems like you're productive. Let's lock you down for similar to the Jeff McNeil contract, where it was just buying out the last 2 years of his deal and adding an extra 3, I believe it was. You buy out the last 3 years of Alvarez's arbitration. You'd say you're a Met until you're 30,
mm-hmm.
and you go that direction, or maybe 31, I guess would be the exact years that you'd have to. No, because the next 3 years get him as a free agent going into age 28. So you're making him a catcher with the Mets until he's 30. That's an option that I saw, but especially since he's already going to be arbitration eligible now. You at least create an opportunity for him to be on the Mets for that amount of time. That's my thought on this.
Yeah, and honestly, could be a better answer than mine, just because he is 3 years closer to arbitration than McLean is. It's not unheard of. There are teams that give these extensions out before guys even make the major leagues, and it's like an 8-9 year kind of deal. The Braves do this quite a bit. The Astros have done it 1 or 2 times. But Alvarez was the other one tinkering around in my mind. I was just wondering how David Stearns feels about him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a good answer.
So those are our 2026 final Metsination premonitions. Of the answers that we both gave, Rich, looking at all of our answers, looking at the sheet, if you had to pick one of mine and one of yours that you're the highest % confident will be true, what will it be? I know I threw this at you without actually prepping you. So this is an on-the-spot decision that you're making. There's a very obvious one for me, and it's who will lead the Mets in saves, Devin Williams, because of the lack of candidates. And just like he's going to be the guy. The other one is the smear campaign one that I'm most confident mine will be 100% accurate. But what do you got, Rich?
I will go with those are 2 tempting choices. I think there are factors at play that could impact the saves thing, even though I'm pretty confident in that. I'm not sure there's anything that could happen where David Peterson's on the Mets in 2027 and we both picked that one. So I'm going to go with I'm the most confident in that one.
That is the right
sign
answer.
An extension in like 3 days.
Yeah, it'd be correct if he's traded. I was saying, or he's traded tomorrow, so
it still works. That we're right. It does still work faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's the right answer. David Peterson will not be a New York Met in 2027. And then who will be the primary first baseman? I'm very confident in my not Pete Alonso because he won't be a Met in 2026 or 2027.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, that is technically that actually by definition has a 100% chance of being correct. So there you go.
You got a little cute with that one, but it is technically the most likely.
Shout out, most likely to not to be the Mets' primary first baseman, not Pete Alonso. Yes, I nailed it. Happy New Year, Mets fans. We hope this episode it gave you some hint of optimism, something to look forward to. At least if the Mets don't do what you want them to do, you have our review of our 2026 Premonitions at the end of this year to look forward to. So please stick with us. Rich, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
My only thing is, New Year comes with hope and optimism that hopefully doesn't wear off too quickly. I very much hope that 2026 is a more enjoyable Mets experience than 2025 was last year. Obviously, the final outcome was rough, but it just was not fun to watch or cover or just be a fan of the Mets for a really long time last year. And that extended into what has been a tough start to the offseason. I'm going to choose, at this moment at least, in the spirit of the new year, to be optimistic that things will not be so dark this year as they were last year. Few cool signings or trades would really help me feel more confident in that. But yeah, that's my one joy or moment of optimism or hope, is that it's a new year. We can finally put the bad of 2025 to bed, I hope, and move forward in a positive way.
I will co-sign everything that you said, and I will just say a big thank you to everybody that's come along with us for 2026. We look forward to many more Mets content related things, maybe an emergency live stream over the course of this week or next week, because we're reacting to something that the Mets did. I got to say this before we get out of here, Rich. I know that it will forever be contentious with the fan base across town, for the team across town. I have never felt a stronger kinship to Yankee fans in frustration about an offseason than this one. Every single time I get upset about what the Mets aren't doing, I'm hearing my Yankee brethren also upset about what the Yankees aren't doing. We come at it with like, why did you sign Juan Soto if this is how you're going to approach the offseason? And then I hear, this is Aaron Judge's prime that you're wasting, a generational superstar that you're not doing enough to be reckless or aggressive this offseason. I sense a frustration within the city that I've never seen before with both of the fan bases. Maybe it's compounded by how bad the football teams are. Maybe it's compounded by how mid the hockey teams are. Maybe recently it's additionally compounded by how bad the basketball team has been. But you want to talk about two fan bases that are begging for their front offices to do something big and splashy. It's the two baseball teams with New York at the beginning of their names. So we'll see which one does something first.
Hey man, they got Paul Blackburn.
Paul DeYoung today. Yeah.
Met killer Paul DeYoung.
Met killer Paul DeYoung. You know he's going to have a big hit off of Devin Williams this year. You just know that's going to happen.
You know what, though? He was on the Nationals last year. We said that, and I don't remember a single Paul DeYoung Nationals at bat against the Mets.
I got to be honest, didn't know he was still in the league, Paul DeYoung. And I know I watched every inning that the Mets played against the Nationals. I just don't remember a single. So to your point, he wasn't notable in that series either, even though I'm confident Gary brought up every time Mets killer Paul DeYoung will get an at bat in this game.
You didn't know he was still in the league. This is a massive deep cut that no one else will understand, but he is your Ross Detweiler.
He is that is a extremely deep cut. Well done, sir.
All 12 people who watched us on playback 4 years ago will understand.
Yes, your reaction to Ross Detweiler is still playing. Yeah. Shout out to all of you for tuning in to this edition of the Just Mets podcast. If you dug it, please like this video on YouTube. Remember to subscribe to our channel. On the doorstep of 2,000 subs, which is a great milestone for us to hit this early into our inception. If you're listening, please leave us a 5-star rating. I actually didn't check. Did anybody leave? I will read any 5-star rating that's new that is available. I'm going to go pull up our iTunes, or Apple podcast thing, but leave a 5-star rating on Apple or on Spotify. We greatly appreciate it. Follow us on all socials. A version of Just Mets, but just look for the look for the logo of the words Just Mets coming out of a hat. Looking at 5-star ratings. We do not have a new one. Folks, give us a new one for next week. I will read it. I promise you, I will read it on the air. So 5 stars on the Apple Podcasts. I will read it on the air. That's my promise to you. He is Rich. I am Andrew. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Let's go Mets. And in the words of the immortal Gary Cohen, we are out of here.